Listen to me, child of God. You didn't come this far by accident. You came this far by divine design. I don't care what the storm looks like. I don't care who walked away. I don't care what's broken or unfinished in your life. If God started it, He's gonna finish it. You see, sometimes the enemy whispers, "You're stuck, you'll never make it, you've failed too many times." But I came to break that lie today, because the God who began a good work in you is not a quitter. He doesn't abandon His projects. He doesn't walk away from His promises. What He begins, He completes. What He authors, He finishes. What He plants, He brings to harvest. You may not see it yet, but there's a completion anointing over your life. There's a divine blueprint working behind the scenes. The tears you've cried are watering the promise. The pain you've endured is producing purpose. The delay is not denial, it's development. So don't you dare give up now. Don't you dare walk away halfway through the miracle. God is not finished, He's just getting started. You're still in His hands, you're still in His plan, and He will finish what He started in you. When God starts something, He never leaves it half done. Heaven doesn't produce unfinished work. God doesn't initiate a plan and then abandon it in the middle. When He begins a good work in you, He's already seen it through to completion in His divine timeline. You might still be living in the middle of it, struggling to see the end, but from God's perspective, it's already finished. He's the Alpha and the Omega, not just the beginning and the end, but everything in between. When He started shaping you, molding you, calling you, He did so with a finished vision in mind. Nothing about your life catches Him by surprise. The detours, the delays, the disappointments, they were all written into the blueprint of His purpose for you. When you look around and all you see is chaos, remember that God is not pacing heaven wondering what to do next. He's the master builder, and every builder knows that the process can look messy before the masterpiece is revealed. The foundation has to be dug, the stones have to be placed, and sometimes the structure looks incomplete. But that doesn't mean it's abandoned. It just means the work is still in progress, and while you're questioning, "God, are you still working?" He's saying, "Yes, I'm still here, still building, still shaping, still finishing what I started in you." There's something powerful about understanding that God doesn't quit. People might quit on you, friends might walk away, opportunities may dry up. You might even feel like you've failed too many times to recover. But God is not like man. He doesn't start based on your potential and quit when you struggle. He begins with the end already established. Before you were even formed in your mother's womb, He spoke destiny over you. He planted purpose inside of you. And that purpose doesn't expire because of your pain. The promises of God are not dependent on your perfection. They're anchored in His faithfulness. Some of you are standing in a season where nothing makes sense. You prayed, you believed, and still it feels like the promise is far away. But don't mistake silence for absence. The work is still going on, just beneath the surface. You can't always see the roots growing under the soil, but that doesn't mean life isn't happening. God is developing you in the dark, finishing you in the fire, preparing you in the process. What you call waiting, God calls working. He's aligning, positioning, and perfecting every piece of your journey so that when the time comes, the vision He started in you will be revealed in glory. God doesn't build weak structures. He builds to last, and that's why sometimes it feels like the process is slow, because He's strengthening your foundation. He's making sure that when the blessing comes, It won't crush you. He's teaching you endurance, faith, patience, and trust, because completion isn't about speed. It's about strength. What God starts, He sustains, and what He sustains, He completes. You might be walking through the valley right now, but the valley doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're still on the path. God didn't bring you this far to leave you stranded halfway. There are no half-finished promises in heaven's portfolio. When He said, "Let there be light," the darkness couldn't resist. When He said, "It is finished," on the cross, redemption was sealed forever. So if He could finish salvation for the whole world, surely He can finish the good work He began in you. Don't let frustration fool you. Don't let fatigue make you forget that God's hand is still on your life. The process might be longer than you expected, but every second is intentional. Every struggle is shaping you for what's coming. So stand firm in faith. Even when it looks incomplete, even when it feels uncertain, trust the one who never abandons His creation. Heaven doesn't have a work-in-progress sign that stays up forever. God is a finisher. He started something in you with purpose, power, and eternal intent, and He will see it through to the end. It may not happen the way you imagined, but it will happen right on time. Because when God starts something, He finishes it, and when He finishes it, it's perfect. Delay is not denial, it's divine development. That truth will change your whole perspective if you let it sink deep into your spirit. Sometimes we think God has forgotten us simply because things didn't happen when we expected them to. We think delay means rejection, that waiting means punishment, but in the kingdom of God, waiting is never wasted. God doesn't delay to destroy you, He delays to develop you. He pauses the promise because He's perfecting the person. What you call a setback, heaven calls preparation. There's something sacred about divine timing. God's timing is not your timing because His plan operates on eternal purpose, not human impatience. When God told Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, decades passed before Isaac was even born. It wasn't because God lied or forgot. It was because the promise required maturity. The delay was necessary for development. Abraham had to grow into the kind of man who could carry what God wanted to release. The same is true for you. God's promise is too heavy for who you are right now, so He's using time to strengthen your shoulders. In those seasons of delay, when doors seem closed and silence feels heavy, God is working behind the scenes. He's teaching you how to depend on Him, how to hear His voice, how to endure the waiting without losing faith. Delay builds discipline. It develops trust. It trains your heart to remain faithful when nothing seems to move. Because if your faith only works when everything happens fast, then your faith is fragile. Real faith knows how to worship while waiting. Real faith says, even if He hasn't done it yet, I still believe He will. The children of Israel could have reached the promised land in 11 days, but it took them 40 years. Why? Because God wasn't just taking them to the promise. He was taking Egypt out of them. He was changing their mindset from slaves to sons, from victims to victors. That's what delay does. It transforms you. God is not just preparing a blessing for you. He's preparing you for the blessing. If He gave it too soon, you'd mishandle it. If He answered every prayer instantly, you'd never learn to rely on His strength. So He hides you in seasons of delay, not to punish you, but to protect you from premature exposure. You may be looking at others who seem to be moving faster, getting ahead, living in their promise while you're still waiting. Don't compare your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 10. God is writing your story in divine order. You might feel like he's late, but he's right on time for what he's building in you. Every delay has a divine purpose. Every waiting season has a hidden blessing. While you're waiting, he's working. While you're doubting, he's developing. And when he's done, you'll look back and thank him that he didn't give it to you when you first asked for it. Delay stretches your faith. It teaches you to pray deeper, to listen longer, to trust harder. It's in the waiting room that your spiritual muscles grow. You learn how to stand firm when the answer doesn't come quickly. You learn that obedience is not about speed, but about consistency. God uses time as a tool to refine your heart. You can't microwave maturity. You have to walk through the process. Every great purpose is seasoned in the soil of patience. So don't despise your delay. Don't curse the process. Don't give up because the clock is ticking. God doesn't measure destiny by minutes or hours. He measures it by readiness. He knows exactly when to open the door. He knows when your faith is strong enough, when your heart is healed enough, when your character is shaped enough to handle what's next. The promise still stands, but the process is preparing you to receive it. One day you'll look back and realize that the delay wasn't a detour, it was the exact route to destiny. You'll see how every closed door kept you safe, how every not yet protected your purpose, how every moment of waiting built something inside you that success never could. Delay doesn't mean God said no. It means he's saying, wait, I'm not done working on you yet. Hold on to your faith. Keep trusting through the silence. Keep believing through the waiting, because when the appointed time comes, God will move suddenly, and everything you've been praying for will make sense. The delay is not denial. It's divine development, and when the development is complete, the promise will arrive right on time. The middle of the process doesn't define the end of the promise. It's the in-between that tests us the most, that place between what God said and what we see, between the prophecy and the proof, between the beginning and the breakthrough. The middle is messy. It's confusing, it's stretching, it's uncomfortable. It's where faith is forged and where doubt whispers the loudest. But just because you're in the middle doesn't mean you're done. The middle is not the measure of your destiny. It's just the space where God builds strength, shapes character, and prepares you for the fulfillment of His Word. Everyone loves the beginning when the vision is fresh, when the fire burns bright, when hope is strong. Everyone rejoices at the end when the promise is fulfilled, when the blessing is visible, when the victory is won. But it's the middle that breaks most people. It's the middle that makes you question if you heard God right. It's the middle that makes you wonder if you took a wrong turn. It's the middle where you look around and nothing matches what you imagined. That's where your faith is truly proven, because it's easy to believe when everything looks like the promise. It's another thing entirely to believe when everything looks like the opposite. The middle is where Joseph sat in a prison cell after dreaming of the palace. The middle is where David hid in caves after being anointed as king. The middle is where Abraham waited decade after decade for the son God promised. The middle doesn't look like the miracle, but it's where the miracle is formed. If Joseph had given up in the prison, he never would have made it to the palace. If David had surrendered in the cave, he never would have held the crown. The middle is not punishment, it's preparation. God does His deepest work in the hidden seasons where no one claps and nothing seems to move. You can't judge God's promise by what the middle looks like. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's over. Just because you can't see progress doesn't mean God isn't moving. The middle teaches you how to walk by faith and not by sight. When you're in the middle, you learn how to praise without proof. You learn how to trust without evidence. You learn how to believe without seeing the end. And that's the kind of faith that moves mountains, not the faith that sees the finish line, but the faith that keeps walking when the road disappears. Sometimes the middle feels like contradiction. God said one thing, but everything around you says the opposite. He said you're chosen, but you feel rejected. He said you're blessed, but you're broke. He said you're healed, but you're still hurting. That's the tension of the middle when reality doesn't line up with revelation. But that's also where God proves himself faithful. He's the God of the process as much as he's the God of the promise. He doesn't just show up at the end. He walks with you through every step in between. Even when you can't trace his hand, you can trust his heart. The middle is where your worship becomes real. It's where you learn to sing through the struggle, to pray through the pain, to keep believing through the battle. It's in the middle that your roots grow deep, because surface faith won't survive the weight. God allows the middle to strengthen you for the miracle. What looks like delay is actually development. What feels like silence is actually strategy. God is building in private what he will reveal in public. So don't quit in the middle. Don't stop halfway. Don't let exhaustion make you abandon what faith began. You might be tired, but you're still chosen. You might be uncertain, but you're still anointed. The middle doesn't mean failure. It means formation. Every great story has a middle chapter that looks nothing like the ending, but it's the middle that gives the ending its power. Without the middle, there is no testimony, no growth, no transformation. God's promise over your life is not canceled just because the middle feels confusing. The author hasn't stopped writing. The potter hasn't left the wheel. The builder hasn't walked off the job. He's still working, still shaping, still moving. So hold on. Keep the faith. Keep walking even when the way isn't clear. The middle may not look like victory, but it's leading you straight to it. Because the middle of the process never defines the end of the promise. God does. And when he finishes, it will be far greater than you ever imagined. Your setback is a setup for God's completion. What the enemy meant to use to break you, God is using to build you. Life will knock you down, circumstances will shake your faith, and seasons will make you question whether you'll ever rise again. But the truth is, every setback you've faced has been divinely orchestrated to position you for what God is preparing next. You might see a loss, God sees leverage. You might see failure, God sees foundation. The very thing you thought disqualified you is the thing he will use to display his glory through you. God doesn't waste pain. He doesn't waste betrayal, disappointment, or delay. Every tear you've cried, every closed door you've encountered, every time you were pushed back, all of it has purpose. You may have thought the setback was the end of your story, but God is saying, I'm not done yet. When Joseph was thrown into a pit by his brothers, it looked like a setback. When he was sold into slavery, it looked like a setback. When he was imprisoned for something he didn't do, it looked like a setback. But in the eyes of God, every one of those moments was a setup for the palace. What others meant for evil, God used for good. Sometimes the road to destiny requires detours. God allows setbacks not to stop you, but to shift you. You thought the job you lost was a failure, but maybe God needed to move you into a place where your gift could grow. You thought the relationship that ended was rejection. but God was clearing your path for someone aligned with your assignment. Setbacks are not proof of God's absence. They are evidence of His redirection. He's moving the pieces of your life into divine order, setting the stage for His promise to unfold in the right place and time. When life sets you back, it's easy to let frustration turn into fear. You start wondering if you missed your moment, if you've gone too far, if it's too late. But God never loses track of time. He's not behind schedule, and neither are you. Every step, even the backward ones, are part of His plan. Sometimes God has to strip things away so He can reveal what's real. He'll let the wrong people leave, the wrong doors close, and the wrong dreams die, so that when the right season comes, you'll recognize His hand on it. Your setback is training ground for your comeback. You're learning how to fight in faith, how to trust through trials, how to worship in weakness. It's the breaking that makes you stronger, the crushing that brings the oil, the setback that positions the comeback. You can't appreciate resurrection without first facing a crucifixion. God uses the breaking points to bring forth breakthrough. The setback you're in now might just be the womb for your next level of purpose. Think of David, overlooked by his family, ignored by his brothers, underestimated by everyone. That's a setback, but God used that very isolation to train him in the field, to shape him into the warrior who would one day defeat Goliath and sit on the throne. The field was a setup for the fight, and the fight was a setup for the crown. God always turns what looks like a disadvantage into divine advantage. You may not understand it now, but one day you'll look back and realize that what hurt you actually helped you. Don't despise the setback. It's proof that God's hand is still molding you. The enemy wants you to see the fall as failure, but God wants you to see it as formation. He's not finished. He's setting you up for something greater. When life pushes you back, don't lose heart. That's just the tension before the release. Like a bow being drawn, the further you're pulled back, the farther you'll fly forward when God releases you into purpose. So stand firm, wipe your tears. Don't quit in the middle of what God is using to prepare you. This setback is not your end, it's your beginning. The pain, the loss, the rejection, the silence, it's all part of the setup for completion. You will rise again, not in your own strength, but in the power of the one who turns setbacks into setups and struggles into stories of victory. When it's all said and done, you'll see that every pushback was really a push forward into the destiny God had waiting for you all along. Faith is the bridge between what God began and what He'll fulfill. It's what carries you from promise to manifestation, from spoken word to completed work. Without faith, the journey feels impossible, because faith is what anchors you when everything around you looks uncertain. God gives you a word, a vision, a glimpse of destiny, but it's faith that keeps you moving when the path disappears. It's faith that stands firm when sight fails. The distance between what God said and what you see is often filled with silence, but faith walks through that silence, trusting that God is still speaking, still working, still finishing what He started. Faith is not denial of reality. It's belief in a greater reality. It's the inner conviction that what God promised is more real than what you're currently experiencing. Faith doesn't wait to see proof. It becomes the proof. When God tells you to build when there's no wood, to walk when there's no path, to believe when there's no evidence, that's faith. It's Noah building an ark before rain ever fell. It's Abraham packing his bags for a land he's never seen. It's Peter stepping out of the boat before the water turns solid. Faith lives between the "it shall be" and the "it is finished." Sometimes God starts something in you that looks too big for you. The vision feels impossible, the dream feels out of reach, and the process feels too painful. That's where faith stands tall. Faith says, even though I don't see it yet, I know He's not done. Faith doesn't rely on feelings because feelings fluctuate with circumstances. Faith stands on truth, the truth that God cannot lie and His word will not return void. You may not understand the how or the when, but faith reminds you of the who. The God who began the work is faithful to complete it, and faith keeps your eyes fixed on Him instead of the storm. Faith is not a bridge made of ease and comfort. It's often built on tears, prayer, and perseverance. Every plank of that bridge is formed through trust, trusting that God's delay isn't denial, that His silence isn't absence, that His process isn't punishment. Faith doesn't just get you to the promise, it grows you for the promise. It stretches your capacity to carry what's coming. It matures your spirit, humbles your pride, and refines your character. Because if the promise is great, the process will be greater. Faith is what keeps you walking when the weight of waiting tries to break you. The bridge of faith is not always steady. There will be days when doubt shakes it, when fear whispers that you've missed your moment, when disappointment makes you want to turn back. But even when your faith feels weak, God's faithfulness is strong. Faith isn't about never doubting, it's about never quitting. It's the choice to take one more step when everything in you wants to stop. It's the quiet whisper in your soul that says, God didn't bring me this far to leave me now. Every step of faith builds a testimony, and every testimony strengthens the bridge for the next storm. God honors faith because faith honors Him. Faith declares that He is trustworthy even when the outcome is uncertain. When you move in faith, heaven moves with you. The enemy can attack your finances, your relationships, your peace, but he can't destroy your faith unless you let him. That's why Jesus told Peter, I have prayed for you, that your faith fail not. Because faith is the foundation of your connection to God's completion. If faith remains, the bridge stands, and the promise remains reachable. You might be standing in the middle of that bridge right now, with one side fading behind you and the other still hidden in fog. Don't give up. The same God who started the journey is waiting at the finish line. Faith is what links His beginning to His ending. Every promise He made is still alive. Every word He spoke is still true. Faith doesn't make the journey easy, but it makes it possible. So keep walking, keep believing, keep trusting, because faith will carry you across the unknown. It will bridge the gap between where you are and where God is taking you. The winds may blow, the waves may crash, but faith will not fail you. The bridge will hold because it's built on the Word of God, and what He began, He will surely fulfill. God's hand is still on you even when you feel forgotten. There are moments in life when silence feels heavy, when heaven seems quiet, and when you wonder if God has moved on from your story. You look around and see others rising, doors opening for them, prayers being answered, and you can't help but think, did God forget about me? But let me tell you something, God never forgets what He forms. His hand is still on you, even in the seasons when you can't feel His touch. He's not absent. He's working in ways you can't yet see. There are times when God hides His hand, not because He's gone, but because He's shaping something deeper within you. The potter doesn't talk to the clay the entire time he's molding it. Sometimes He's silent, but His hands never leave the wheel. The silence of God does not equal the absence of God. You may feel unseen, overlooked, or left behind, but God's fingerprints are still all over your life. He's turning what looks like stillness into strength. He's taking what feels like being stuck and using it to anchor your soul in His purpose. Feeling forgotten can crush the heart, but God specializes in remembering what the world forgets. Joseph was left in prison, forgotten by men, but not by God. David was left in the fields while others were paraded before the prophet, but God saw him. Hagar was cast out into the wilderness, but God called her by name and reminded her, "I see you." You serve a God who sees, a God who remembers, a God whose hand remains steady even when yours trembles. What you perceive as isolation is often preservation. God isolates to insulate. He keeps you hidden not to harm you, but to protect what He's forming inside of you. When God's hand is on you, rejection can't remove you. People may walk away, opportunities may close, but His favor will still find you. Sometimes He allows separation, so He can prepare elevation. He has to pull you away from certain things, so He can position you for greater ones. It hurts when you're pruned, but pruning is proof that you're growing. God only cuts what He intends to multiply. So even in the cutting, His hand is there, steady, sure, intentional. You may be walking through a season where the light is dim and the path unclear, but God hasn't taken His eyes off you. He knows exactly where you are. The same hand that held you in victory is holding you in the valley. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. The same hand that opened the Red Sea still parts the waters in your life. The same hand that lifted Peter out of the waves is reaching for you when your faith starts to sink. You haven't fallen too far, failed too much, or waited too long for His hand to find you. You are never beyond His reach. Sometimes God's hand feels heavy because He's shaping you for more than you asked for. The pressure you feel is purpose being molded. When the potter presses, the clay doesn't understand. But the potter knows the design he's creating. You may not understand the season, but trust the hand that's shaping it. He's pressing to prepare you, stretching to strengthen you, molding you to match the masterpiece He already sees. His hand is not against you, it's for you. And when He's done, what comes out of the fire will be stronger, purer, and ready for the promise. Don't mistake hiddenness for abandonment. Don't confuse silence with distance. Even when it looks like nothing's happening, His hand is moving. You are still chosen, you are still anointed, you are still part of His plan. God's hand doesn't slip, it doesn't shake, and it doesn't let go. You might not see the evidence yet, but one day when you look back, you'll realize that every step, every tear, and every season carried His touch. So stand firm in faith, even when you feel forgotten. Lift your head and remember, if God's hand started it, His hand will finish it. You are not forsaken. You are being formed. You are not lost. You are being led. And through every high and low, through every silence and storm, the unchanging truth remains: God's hand is still on you. When it's all said and done, this message reminds us that ***, God never leaves anything unfinished. ***, what He begins, He sustains, and what He sustains, He completes. Every season of delay, every moment of struggle, every tear that's fallen has been part of the process leading to His promise. You may not understand everything you've walked through, but nothing has been wasted, not one step, not one setback, not one silent night. The same God who began the work in you is the God who will bring it to completion. He's been there in the fire, in the valley, in the waiting, and in the breaking, and he's still there now. What looked like loss was shaping your strength. What felt like delay was building your faith. What seemed like the end was only the setup for a new beginning. So stand tall, keep your faith steady, keep your spirit anchored. You are not forgotten, not forsaken, not finished. You are *** in progress, *** under the hand of a perfect God. The process may be hard, but the promise is sure. The same voice that spoke destiny over your life is still speaking it now. Hold your head high and declare it over yourself. *** a God will finish what he started in me. *** and when he does, it will be more beautiful, more powerful, and more complete than you ever imagined. Because when God finishes something, it's finished with glory, purpose, and divine perfection.